Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Really stoked to have you here. And today I'm joined by Anthony Zhang, the founder of Vinovest. It's a platform that I've been using actually over the last quarter. Really stoked about it. It's an alternative way to invest your money, make your money work for you by investing in fine wine, an industry that has traditionally been very much a closed door for most people. So Anthony's going to tell you all about it. And thanks so much for being here, man.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure for us. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, for sure. No problem at all. And basically, the first thing I wanted to do is, in your own words, how would you describe Vinovest, as a product, as a company, to someone who's never heard of it?
VinoVest is a way for you to really easily invest in fine wine as an asset class.
Yeah.
I'm sure you may be thinking like, why would I invest in fine wine? So
Yeah.
it's actually an asset class that has outperformed the S&P for the last 30 years. And when I found that out, I was like, holy crap, 10, 11% annualized returns are pretty good. And we make it dead easy to do. You don't need to be a wine expert. You don't need any sort of wine storage or logistics infrastructure. We make everything a fully digital experience and a really fun experience as well.
Yeah, I could definitely attest to that. I mean, it's pretty much as simple as opening up the account, you fund your account, and really the rest is handled for you. You pretty much just have to figure out how much you want to invest and keep an eye on the wine as it starts rolling in. So I guess, from my perspective, one of the main things that I'm focused on now is, finding places to put, put investment resources out there to hedge against inflation, to find alternatives to savings accounts, which are obviously, they're not doing people any favors these days with the rates and talk of negative rates too. Are you seeing an uptick in customers now that are interested in finding these alternative ways to protect their spending power?
Definitely, because as you mentioned, right, there's not too many other places outside the stock market that you can find meaningful yield.
Hmm.
And especially with kind of bonds and cash not really making much sense, people are interested in learning about new things, and wine is one of those things I think that, as you kind of alluded to, has been out of reach for the general public, and now we're making it much more accessible.
Yeah, and what's the outlook for wine? Like, I know in building this company, I'm sure you had a lot of experience, and your team has a lot of experience in looking at the macro trends of investing in wine and where it's been and where it's going from here. Could you give folks that are watching like a general idea of where the wine industry as an investment and asset class is going from here, maybe 5 years from now?
Yeah, so it's definitely a pretty bullish outlook. I think the main reasons are because there is always going to be more people trying to drink wine than people can produce, right? You can only squeeze so much juice out of a grape. And due to climate change, a lot of the major wineries are forced to have smaller yields, right? It's getting hotter earlier, they're harvesting earlier, they're producing less bottles every single year. And there's just more and more people wanting to consume those bottles. So it's a really finite, even decreasing supply every year, coupled with increasing demand.
Right. Yeah. And for someone that's watching, this channel, often we talk about cryptocurrencies, we talk about Bitcoin, and I think today people are starting to care more about the fundamental economics of products and investments that they make. And that scarcity is what makes Bitcoin so appealing. It's also applicable in wine. And so, one of my personal goals has been to find products like yours that really capture that same value proposition and to spread and diversify, investments.
Totally. And that's exactly, I think, why the fundamentals are strong, and that's why I believe in the asset class.
Definitely. And so going forward, on your platform, I know there's, some of the things that I always hear about when I'll talk to friends about this or I'll talk to colleagues. The first thing that always comes up in those conversations is say, oh, well, I saw this Netflix documentary about, fraud in the wine industry and how many bottles there are that are counterfeit. I just, I don't know how to store it. Like, how is Vinovest approaching the issue of fraud and then, safe storage of the wine?
Yeah, I think with any kind of asset that is highly coveted, whether it be sneakers to luxury goods to,
Yeah.
you know, art, right? Like whenever there's a lot of value on it, especially on the secondary market, there's going to be counterfeiters. And I think that is one of the biggest risks of alternative assets, especially ones that require a lot of expertise, right? Like most people don't know what the hell a real bottle versus a fake bottle is.
Yeah.
So number one is we only really go straight to the source or through professional sources. So direct from the winery or direct from a warehouse where we know that the only other place that wine has been was from the winery. So
Right.
that kind of chain of custody, that provenance is really, really important to us. And that's why we don't really source from like private collectors, right? Like you could tell me you've got the best bottles for the best prices, but like it's really your word against mine, and that's a risk that we can't take. So
Yeah.
number one is really sourcing correctly, and that's why we have really, really stringent sourcing rules. And then number two, I think the other big risk is like wine is a real thing, right? You can really damage it if you keep it in too cold or too hot of condition. So we've got professional storage facilities and really, really robust third-party insurance policies that protect against damage.
That's smart. And that, like for me, who I think probably represents like the average investor or consumer probably, the first thing that I thought of is like, is there insurance? How is their protection against fraud? And then secondly, where is the stuff stored and can I get access to it? And I think those things are covered pretty clearly, as soon as you get to your site, and that's awesome. The only other thing that I think people might wonder is what costs are associated with using the platform. Obviously, you guys have to get paid, and then how, pun intended, how liquid are these assets in terms of collecting your profits?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the right line of questioning, right? Like once you feel safe enough on like the security, all right, well, you know, how does the money get made, right? If it's a free
Yeah.
product, you're usually the product, right?
Right.
So we have an annual management fee that we charge. It ranges from like 2% to 2.85%, depending on your account balance. And
Mhm.
then that'll cover access to the platform, the storage, the insurance, kind of everything that you get as a benefit of the platform. In terms of the liquidity, the I think key distinction is that unlike a lot of these other alternative asset platforms, we're not really securitizing the product and then like issuing shares as fractional ownership. Like
Mhm.
it's just actual wine that you're buying. And the main benefit, other than from a regulatory standpoint, is that we can actually just sell that wine too. So we're selling to retailers, we're selling to restaurants, we're selling to other wine lovers. So
Mhm.
it really, really does help that we're not closing ourselves off from the rest of the wine trade, which is already, a multi-billion-dollar market every year in terms of transaction volume. So that helps us be able to have a lot better liquidity to say like, hey, if you need the money for something, we could liquidate you in a matter of days.
That's probably the most powerful part, right? Is one of the concerns for many when you're buying things that are like maybe classified as commodities or things that are classified as like tangible assets or collectibles, what have you, is the path to liquidation. Like how can you get out to cash, and how quickly can that happen? So if I were sitting in on the opposite side of the screen now thinking, do I want to sign up for this? um, what is the average timeline that you see or that you foresee people holding wine for? Like, what is the recommended timeline you hold for it before you start thinking about converting? And do you guys handle that for customers?
Yeah, so we usually recommend a pretty long-term outlook.
Mm-hmm.
Really, just it takes time for wine to age, right? It takes time for global consumption to do its thing and for your bottle
Yeah.
supply to get lower and lower. And that's why we really recommend at least 5 years. So
Mm-hmm.
usually people are having that like 5 to 10 year outlook. We will also actively give you buying and selling recommendations. So it's not just a stagnant portfolio of wines that we choose for you. We do that active rebalancing, usually only after a few years or unless there's some crazy market movements. And I think that's something important, right? This is not day trading. This is not something that is a quick flip. This is
Mm-hmm.
kind of a more, I'd say, like stable long-term part of your portfolio, and something that you are keeping to really counter the volatility that you may have in other investments.
For sure. And the point you made there about like time horizon and the fact that this gives you just another option to put a diverse portfolio of assets in the mix. Having a mix of short term and long term plays is generally thought of as good practice.
Mm-hmm.
And the other part too is, I think there's so much focus on day trading and, options, because we're like in the Robinhood generation now. Everyone's like interested in that. But that puts us in a position where no one's thinking about these long-term, holding an asset that appreciates in value over time where you don't have to think about it.
Yeah, and that's honestly, I think one of the hardest parts about investing is just like sitting on your hands and actually doing nothing
Yeah.
sometimes, right?
Patience.
Obviously, both of us have been in crypto, and like, we're always like, oh shit, if I held this instead of
Yeah.
selling or trading it, I probably would have been better off in some circumstances. And it's certainly the case in an asset class like wine.
Totally. Well, and that's a good point you brought up. We have to touch on it. This is a crypto focused channel in many ways. You do come from a crypto background. Can you give folks an understanding of what you did in the crypto space and maybe how that may have driven you to pursue Vinovest in the first place?
Yeah. So prior to building this company, my co-founder and I were executives at a company called Blockfolio. So they
Mm-hmm.
do cryptocurrency price tracking and now a crypto exchange.
Yep.
And I think just being in that space really opened up our horizons to other asset classes, right? If you're crazy enough to invest in crypto, you're pretty open-minded, I'd say, right?
Yeah.
Like you're buying crypto kitties, you're buying antique violin NFTs, like you're buying a bunch of interesting stuff. And that's really how we started learning more about wine investing and just realizing that, like, unlike crypto, which was really, really easy for anyone to get into, wine investing had just a ton of barriers to entries when it was kind of an old boys club that we wanted to really be able to open up.
Yeah. In this, it's such a natural, natural progression, right? Whether you start in wine and then move to crypto, or you start in crypto and move to wine, like a lot of the fundamental reasons why people like it are the same. They're shared. And, I'm very seldom excited about investing products. Like most of the time, I'm thinking like these things are going to be misused, like Robinhood is so often misused while the premise is good. But this is a product. I've used it for a full quarter now, and I'll be sticking with it long term without a doubt. So folks that are watching, I'll link it up in the description below for you to check out, see if it's for you. Obviously no pressure, but my last question for you, Anthony, is where is Vinovest going from here? What are there any interesting features or avenues that you're looking to explore that might give folks more options to, grow their wealth, build up their asset portfolio?
Absolutely. So I think a few key things that we want to be able to do is we're realizing that some of our earlier customers are like, hey, I like the wines that you've chosen for me, and I'm learning more about them, and I'd like to also maybe make my own decisions. So
Mm-hmm.
a trading platform is going to be in the works, allowing to have users who do want to have a little more active management on their own to be able to add to their portfolios. So that's one thing that we're really excited about. And then the other thing is just continuing the education, right? Like most
Mm-hmm.
people are intimidated by wine in general, right? It's kind of
Yeah.
a nebulous thing, and so is investing. So we want to continue to have fun, creative, and accessible ways to help people learn more about wine through a financial lens.
That's awesome. Well, you can count on me. I'm happy to make some content about wine because
Absolutely, and you're
I'm an
helping.
enjoyer of wine and it as an asset, no doubt.
There you go. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, folks, if you're watching now, you have questions for Anthony, leave them in the comments below. I'll pass him his way. Him or his team, I'm sure, can answer away any questions that you have. And of course, check it out. See if you wanna join, sign up, give it a go, and let me know what you think. Thanks everyone for watching, and Anthony, thanks so much for taking the time to join me on the channel today.
Thanks everybody for your time.
Awesome. Cheers.